You're watching Moonhawk Studios Presents.
All right, welcome to another edition of the eminently watchable Moonhawk Studios.
Hey, we're on
Presents.
YouTube now, and sometimes they are cats.
Oh my god.
I stand by what I said and the bodies I have in the backyard.
You had 6 words to say, man.
It's an audio podcast for a visual world.
Yes. Oh god. Before this goes further off the rails, I am your host, Mac Paladin. And with me in the studio, as always, is my good friend Adam.
See, this is what happens when you use the voice to our show. He doesn't. He's kind of used to our cues.
Yeah, and not doing the countdown actually threw me off.
Oh man. All right. Elemental Ogre is kicking it around here somewhere.
I don't know why you were bitching about me holding up the show. You were the one going to the bathroom, thunder ass.
Jesus. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. Oh boy.
Jesus, can't help us where we're going.
Rounding out the quartet of MCs, we have Soapy in the house.
That's me unmuting myself. Yeah, you definitely have Sophie in the house. Here I am.
Nice.
10 out of 10.
Petty fan.
I didn't mess up my part. Do I get a cookie?
You don't get a punch. Goofing up the intro is the Colics.
I cannot be held responsible for all of my actions.
And introducing the latest robot master power, Twilight Winter.
Hello.
I seem to sigh a lot more on this show these days.
There's
man.
probably a reason for it.
As we allege every week, we have a great show for you tonight. However, before that happens, Adam, why don't you lead us off with the news?
News. Let's see. Yeah, not a lot of news this week. At least not personal news. I mean, actual news. It never fucking stops.
Oh, God, yes.
I get a tinge of a headache if I spend more than 10 minutes on Twitter. Because, it's always fucking something.
Oh, I know. It's just unbelievable what's going on.
The longest domino chain ever.
Well, it's like investigations take a while. It's like, people whine that, not enough is being done about Russia and shit. But I'm like, it took 2 years for Watergate to fully unravel itself. Like, things are actually progressing pretty fast now, I'm being honest. But, enough about the politics of the age. Let's see. I guess in terms of my show, we're starting to gear up for E3.
Ooh.
Yeah, biggest week of the broadcasting season because a lot of fucking conferences happening and just a lot of stuff. I'm like, we're looking at having previous MSP guests dragged because fuck lining up a guest, a game dev guest that week.
Yeah, though he has not confirmed yet, so maybe.
Like, if we don't have a guest, then we just talk about E3 shit. But it's just, lining up people for E3 is hard because, everyone's getting ready for E3.
Yeah, they're either going or they're watching.
Yeah, I'm like, though I think that, this is kind of it for the major conferences for the year. Well, actually, no, that's just American. there's like Gamescom in the fall.
Yeah, I was
for-
about to say Gamescom is coming, and I think Tokyo Game Show is coming.
Yeah, Tokyo Game Show is also there, but it affects us less because we
Yeah.
don't have a lot of Japanese devs on the program. I mean, it's happened, but obvious language barrier is obvious. So,
Mhm.
with that in mind, Ogre, you go next.
Yep.
Oh, let's see. We're almost done with Color Splash. It's unbelievable, I know. I think we got one more recording session and then we're just finished. And from what Adams told me, I swear to God, I thought we started this in April, but apparently we started in February.
I looked up the date. I think it was February 8th.
Oh, that means we started in January, or we actually started recording in January or something.
I suppose I could pull up the first video.
Gonna cry now.
Yeah, but the point is, you've been.
Yeah, it's a freaking long ass game apparently.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
a lot. No, you've only been working on it for February 5th.
yeah, so that means we started sometime in January.
So you've been working on this for 3+ months.
Yeah, that means it's gonna end in June. So yeah, that's oh god, that's about 6 months on one game. How did that freaking happen?
Unexpected bloat.
Oh yes, there was definitely a lot more than I thought there was gonna be.
Well, it's like I think you forgot that this was a full release console game.
I did not figure it was gonna be this freaking long. All things considered, but at least it's not Persona 4.
No. I think you spent longer on Thousand Year Door, honestly.
Probably. Though I couldn't tell you about that.
Well, it's been like how many years since you did all the other Paper Mario games?
A few.
Yeah.
But other than that, let's see. So yeah, we're gonna have to. So, we got some smaller projects set up because we're not gonna do this. Not right away. Not gonna do anything big. We're just gonna have to figure that one out because. It's less I'm burned out on bigger projects. It's more that I'm kind of burned out on. Holy shit, was this a big project? Let's make sure we know what we're getting into next time.
Well, you've got some smaller projects that you need to get back to anyway.
Yeah.
Like the Homestar Runner stuff.
Yeah. Let me see. Anything else I need to go through?
Mega Man. Somebody
No.
dropped.
Oh, that was so bad getting back in.
Okay. You were saying, Ogre?
No, I was just trying to think what else news I had from the show that wasn't Final Fantasy XIV related.
Your obsession.
Well, we finally beat Alexander last night for us. It was Naka and I needed the win, and we finally got our wins, and God, was that fucking fun. A little extraneous, but fun. I even finished off almost all my tank gear. All I'm missing is the axe for Warrior, and I'm pretty much best in slot for all the tanks. So that means I go into Stormblood going like, why is everybody buying new armor? I don't even need anything.
You will
For
by
about
about,
levels.
yeah, I was about to say 66, you should need some armor.
Yeah, about mid-levels, it's usually when you need to invest in the new stuff, but at least I'm free from that. Yeah, and Naka got some stuff too. He got the monk body from that. I actually got some Dragoon stuff too, so my Dragoon is somehow getting slightly better, even though I haven't played that in weeks. But I was just finally happy to have that thing done. Just freaking ecstatic. I wish you would have had that moment recorded just so I could just hear my going, yeah, and pounding my desk.
Oh, believe me, my first time I cried a little. Of course, I've also been going at it since October, so emotions would
Yeah.
be there.
But yeah, I finally did that, and then a bunch of videos for the new job abilities and the battle system reworks came out today, so we're still kind of fumbling through that. A lot of my favorite jobs got good things, and White Mage is just stuck on being vanilla. But
Yeah, Riku's probably not going to be happy about that.
I doubt she will be. But that's a conversation best left for another time. So who's ever's next is next, and I'm gonna go with the Mega Man guy.
Well, had a nice friends and family outing for Memorial Day weekend, and then bought a new TV on clearance sale, and that's about it in terms of personal news. I've otherwise been playing games and games for the show, and that's about it.
All
Petty
right.
fan?
Do I?
Lost control of my own goddamn show here. Petty fan, you're up.
Wait a second, you had control of it to begin with?
Well, I don't know. Everybody's just playing hot potato here. It's like anyway. Moving on. Petty fan, why don't you give your news?
I technically beat Nier Automata last night. And by technically beat, I mean I got the C and D endings, so that's technically the end, but I have more endings to get. Let's see. Still been trying to look for guests for the show. And not a whole lot else. I'm just waiting for my phone to come in, I guess.
Anything from your doctor? Or...
Nope, I don't see I see a GI doctor June 12th. That's the next doctor's appointment I have. So, other than that, I think I'm good. Other than I'm slowly falling apart, but you guys already know about that already.
Whee!
Next victim,
All
I
right.
mean...
Alex.
Well, thankfully the weather seems to have calmed down. It was thundering quite a bit earlier, so I was.
Are you communicating with Skype via a tin can and some string?
Do I sound like I am?
Yes, you do.
I had my my microphone up because I was eating popcorn. I'm sorry, I'm here now.
I was using the microphone as a listening device. It wasn't working real well.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was worried about the weather earlier because it was thundering, but it seems to have stopped for now at least. It's been pretty quiet this week. I had pretty much absolutely nothing to do over the weekend because my Pathfinder got canceled and my parents were going to my dad's uncle's funeral on Saturday, so I couldn't go to the thing I normally been doing on Saturday. So I had to stay home for that. Been playing some Vigi games, trying to get some good use out of the Switch that I have, so I finished all but one thing in Wonder Boy and the Dragon's Trap, and now I'm playing some Puyo Puyo Tetris because that's interesting, even though I'm not very good at either of those games, but you know.
I'm kind of good at Tetris, but I never played Puyo Puyo.
My main problem is that I cannot think like the 2 turns ahead that it gives you. So I'm really bad at setting up combos in the long run. Even after learning some of the combos that you can set up by looking at the the teaching section. But yeah, other than that, don't have too much going on right now.
All right. And last but certainly not least, Sobe.
Yay, my turn. And I can hear you guys.
Woohoo!
Uh,
And of course you cut out.
Yeah.
What, really?
Yeah, you went wit. and then you just disappeared for a half second there.
Okay. All right. I'm
Good
here now. And
job,
we're just
Skype.
fine, right?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly now, as long as Petty Fan isn't talking over you.
So what's been going on this week? Not a whole lot. I'm still scared of dogs, and school's almost coming to an end. Memorial Day happened.
That was a
There
thing.
was a Harry, yeah, that was a thing. There was a Harry Potter movie on. I still haven't watched it, so yeah, that was my week.
All right. Well, I guess it's my turn, if I must. As you know, as you guys probably saw, if you even bothered to tune into Facebook, I posted. God damn it, Doodles! No, I didn't post anything about Doodles, who just attacked my foot.
It's fine. You didn't need it.
Cat attacks.
Yes. I posted the first rough cut of Scene 1 of Act 1 of the Mercadian Affair. So, proof positive that we've been working and not jerking around for the last 3 weeks.
Are you sure it's not both?
I'll let that be up to your imagination. But Keith and I will no doubt be working on Scene 2 and 3 over the upcoming weekend. We always have our editing sessions on Friday and Saturday evenings after I get off work, so we have almost all of the dialogue, and I am attempting to get a fairly big name to play Ishido Kamizaki, but aside from, in other words, it's an incentive for you to follow me on Facebook, because if you don't, you miss out on a lot of stuff. I posted some hints as to who I'm attempting to acquire, and it's not really a hint. It's more like, oh my God, does anybody know this person? Doodles just jumped into the little cat bed with Pumpkin and is now wrestling with her to try to throw her out.
Death Combat Go.
This has just gone to DEFCON 2.
It doesn't
Make
fit the
cat
sits
joke.
for 2 of us.
Well, I had to warn everybody because you were about to hear a lot of cat howling. But yeah, so I'm trying to get a fairly big name to play Ishido Kamizaki. 25 years ago, when I wrote the role, I originally envisioned, believe it or not, George Takei to play him. And while that vision still holds true, the likelihood of me being able to get George Takei to play him and keep playing him for an indeterminate period of time is growing slimmer and slimmer. So I'm going to my in no way diminished plan B, which is a list of relative A-listers that I amazingly have contact with within my circles. So more on that as it develops.
Oh
So-
my.
God. Other than that, the Starship Moonhawk comic is still updating 3 times a week. We're attempting to blast through Act 4 at breakneck pace because of the fact that I pretty much have all the pages done already. So aside from some minor dialogue alterations, it's going up pretty much as it was originally. There is one pretty significant change because we swapped some characters around, and there is a new scene that needs to be added to Act 5, which is also approximately halfway completed, which means that it's very possible, if we play our cards right, that this comic that I started in 2001 will actually come to an end by the end of this year.
And with the end of the universe?
Jesus. Well, you know, when you spend 16 years failing to complete a 160-page comic book, you tend to start losing hope that anything will actually happen. especially in light of our guest tonight. I believe he just completed his 1700th page today.
I did indeed.
So that's gonna be part of our topic of discussion momentarily. I think, as far as movie news, that's pretty much it. We still have some esoteric stuff like composer, because our original series composer is not universally available to score. So we are trying to get one of Keith's friends to score the film. And that involves using pre-existing tracks written by Jared and sort of meshing them with some brand new music created by this person. Now, since nothing has actually been done yet and no contracts have been signed, I'm not going to release their name. We'll call that something of a non-disclosure agreement, only because nothing has actually happened yet. But I have heard some sample tracks that were pretty good. And the main reason for this is because, as much as it would help our budget, I don't want to use too much royalty-free music. It makes me feel a little hinky, even though it's technically okay if we give proper accreditation, etc., etc. But I would like some stuff that's actually made for the movie instead of having 90 minutes of generic. All right, well, that's it for the news as far as I know. So now we're going to get to the part that I believe everybody was waiting for. I'd like to introduce our guest tonight. I did mention that he just completed his 1700th comic, and that is, and I'd like to introduce, God damn it, I can't even say this tonight. What is wrong with me? I'd like to introduce Jackie Wohlenhaus, creator of Between Failures, which is a pretty amazing comic. What is the update frequency now? Is it 3 times a week?
Yep, Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
All right. So naturally, the first question that comes to mind is, when you created this comic, did you ever think you'd be 1700 in?
No, I didn't really think about it in a long-term way. When I started, it was sort of just something to keep myself busy, and then it evolved into doing it all the time, and getting, paid basically to do it.
Ah, okay. So it has sort of evolved into a business.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's my primary source of income now.
Oh wow. The dream to which we all aspire.
Indeed.
Sorry, Doodles is being an extra big pain. My studio is not exactly secured from cats.
Damn it, Doodles.
I know, right? Now,
I mean the cat.
have you managed to put together the full range of merchandising and all that kind of stuff? Is it
I actually had a really different, I don't know, trajectory on how I made money and stuff than was common when I started.
Oh.
I briefly dabbled with T-shirts and all the crap that, like the books and whatnot, said this is how you're gonna make your money. It's like the merchandising and all that kind of nonsense. And I could never sell any of that stuff, so I just forgot about it and focused primarily on ad revenue, which, with a consistent update schedule was enough to keep it going for long enough until enough steam built up over the years to make it self-sufficient. For the first, I don't know how many years it was exactly. All it could do was pay for its own web hosting, basically.
Right.
And then, as time went by, gathered more of a following. I only ever made one book, and it's not even the full first arc. It's just the first half of it. and I still sell it, but I've never had the time to do the second one, so like that's never been a significant source of income. It's only ever been advertising. And then recently, when Patreon started, uh, instead of dragging my feet like I did for everything else, I was like, I'm just gonna jump in and do this like right from the beginning and see if it works. And if it doesn't, what difference does it make?
Yeah.
And it was a complete game changer. And also like all of the personal tragedy of my life all kind of happened right as Patreon started. And I'm pretty sure that had a significant effect on people being willing to try it out for fear that what I was producing was going to stop. And sort of a tragic, lucky convergence of things all happened at that particular moment.
I have to say tragedy is quite the motivator. I can definitely relate there.
Yeah.
But it's good to hear that actually worked out. I'm looking over the website right now, and I see some pretty interesting ads. I see you've got webcomics, you've got a Lamps Plus ad. That's some fun stuff.
Probably different for different people who are looking at it, because half of the site is that regular internet targeted advertising, then half of it is Project Wonderful. But like HiveWorks takes care of the top part of the advertising, and I run the bottom half basically. And that started when I became an affiliate with them, which is why I've got the navigation bar underneath for the HiveWorks.
I've heard about them. How did that come about?
It's been long enough that I don't remember exactly how it happened anymore, but at some point the CEO, for lack of a better word, approached me and asked me if I wanted to be one of their I can't remember their terminology for like legit HiveWorks member. And at that time I was like, they weren't established as, they didn't have a name or anything like that, and I'd been burnt by other groups. So I was like, no, I don't really want to be, associated with that in a contractual way,
right,
as much as someone who's going to be like a full member. And he offered me to take over part of the advertising for me, host the site for free, and also offer me tech support for basically just having the navigation bar. And like when I asked why he would be willing to do that at all, it was because my update schedule was consistent. I never missed updates, and that would make my comic is kind of like the one that's always there no matter what. So when all
that
like
really helps eyeball consistency.
Yeah. So all like the super fancy ones that take way longer to produce are not doing anything. I'm the interim thing, that it's always there when it says it's going to be, constantly. And it was like there's value in that. And I was like, fine, let's do it. And that helped a lot too, because that happened around I don't know, a couple years before everything kind of went to crap, or after. It kind of depends, because all the different like tragic moments in the story of my website kind of mixed together in my mind. But that was $200 off of like right there, not having to pay for really basically some of the worst hosting on the internet.
I've been
Not
there
the
too.
name of the service
not to
anymore.
point any fingers.
I would
I'll-
say, I would straight up say the name of the company, but I cannot remember it anymore.
I've got plenty of web hosting shade myself. IX web hosting was one of them that reminds me. That sometimes makes me wake up screaming at night.
Yeah, there's a lot of terrible hosts out there. The problem that I had was I was having really significant traffic at that point. And they've throttled my traffic down to nothing. If it went over, 5,000 hits in a day, it would just cut it down to like 150, which
oh my god.
is poison, basically for a website that, this is supposed to thrive on being viewed
Right.
3 times a week and more every single day, depending on how people decide to read it.
Yeah, and then they throw that nonsense at you. Well, if you pay us $100 a month for VPN, we'll get you set all up. It's like,
Yeah. It was already $200 on a site that was barely making enough to keep itself going. So then, when HighWorks came along, that really changed things significantly because they just opened the doors wide up and were like, whatever. They can attack the site, they can do whatever. It will not stop us. We will just run with it like nuts. And they absolutely have. And when the servers get attacked, they're only down briefly. The tech support has been, number one, tech support for free is amazing. Just that alone, just getting the site to a point where it was functional after Comic Press and Comic Easel and all the different I don't know what the word for them is, platforms to present your stuff were all huge messes and things got broken. Having somebody just come in and be like, okay, that's all fixed was amazing. Totally, this huge amount of stress was just revoked. So while everything was falling apart in real life, the comic stuff was finally starting to fall into place. So it made everything else way easier to take.
That's always good news.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't even remember what your original question was at this point.
that is A-okay because I don't remember it either, and that is okay. Let's talk about the comic itself a little bit. First of all, I'm going to make a statement leading into a question here. I got to say that of all the characters, I think I most closely identify with Thomas. Nina is my waifu, and Joe is my spirit animal. What was your inspiration for creating these characters?
The original story was a movie script that I had written over the course of several years working in retail, and I'd always had it in my computer. The first arc of the comic, I think it's the first 300 pages, maybe 600, I don't remember anymore, is basically a movie script that I adapted into this comic, and just was like, well, if people read it, then at least I'll have the knowledge that maybe it would have been a good movie or whatever. And that's where it all started, was Thomas is just the self-insert character of me dealing with working in retail after failing out of college for art, and having no real marketable skills apart from selling other people's crap, and the soul-crushing reality of that, and finding a reason to just keep living in the world where that's all you've got. It's like, what what is the point of going on when this is what you're going to be doomed to for your whole life? And that's basically the whole first part of it. And continuing on, as it moved forward, like how do you live when this is the reality, this like first world problems existence that like so many people, particularly in America, live every day. And it's true for like not just retail, like tons of people in the army are like, this is exactly how the army is run, or any number of professions are like this kind of like corporate faceless thing that runs everything. And we're all like trapped in it. Like I identify with these characters because this is what I go through all the time with the management and all that kind of stuff. But that's how it started, was this like movie script that I had kicking around, and one day basically after a nervous breakdown, I was like, I'm gonna do webcomics, in a flash of bipolar upswing. I was like, this is what's gonna make it for me. This is what's gonna change my life. And at the time when I started, it was right before Scott Kurtz and Brad Geiger, Dave Kellett, and Chris Straub did their How to Make Webcomics book. And like
Right.
webcomics were huge. 10 years ago, it was all brand new. Like the idea that like comics could be on the internet was like, you would see the news articles like, comics on the internet? What's this?
Right.
Webcomics, they're the new thing that just happened. Like, and Scott Kurtz had already been doing it for like 7 years, 10 years. At that time, questionable content had already been around for 3, 4, 5 years. I don't know.
Right.
There were already established comic creators on the internet by that time. But like that was the moment when like the world was like, newspapers are dead. So like, what's gonna be going on now? And I just got swept up in that I don't know, insane philosophy that like this is what you can do.
Right. I
and
always. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just think it's kind of funny because I remember having God, this is going way back to 2010, and now I'm blanking on the name. The creator of Dr. McNinja.
Oh God.
And
oh God, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, and
Christopher Hastings.
Christopher Hastings. Boy, we blew that interview up. It's like one of my co-hosts had this amazing moment with him. It went on for like 6 minutes, and then we realized we had dropped the call.
Oh, yeah. I remember that now.
And we're
The
like,
tears were
pretend like it's
beautiful,
spontaneous.
though.
But we had Chris Hastings, and we had Brian Clevenger, and we had Christopher Straub on the show at one point in season 3. And what's so funny about that, because what you said there just reminded me of all that. It's like whenever we would ask the question, what advice do you have for a new webcomic artist? They would say something asinine like, I don't know, start in 1999.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad advice, but
Right.
That kind of requires.
it's not practical.
You can never get anybody to give you a straight answer half the time. Everybody has to be on all the time.
Well, I think this is what I've learned, and your story of your success here kind of solidifies this in my mind, is that nobody really knows what the magic button is to press. It just, sometimes it's just a confluence of events.
The magic button, like from my perspective, is pure fucking stubbornness.
Yeah, yes.
Just like always keep making whatever it is that you've like doubled down on, and like eventually your audience will appear. It just depends on how long you're willing to like keep doing it, and like what you're willing to burn out of yourself to succeed in whatever you've chosen, basically.
Having a reasonable work ethic helps too.
What's that?
Like,
yeah, how long have you been working on webcomics, Mac?
Since 1999.
I think that if there's anybody who's qualified to answer that advice, it'd be you.
Right. But I always ask the question just because it's fun to hear people's answers,
it's a little different for everybody. You know, everybody has their, you know, their different paths to success because there's no one path necessarily. There's just like places where the magic converges.
Right. You
You know,
got it.
commonalities between people that, you know, do things in successful ways. You know, there's crossover, but like each individual has to find their own method that works. But everybody
Right.
wants it boiled down to like, you know, a soundbite that's like, this is the answer to your question. And I mean,
That's-
I know that when I started, that's what I wanted. You know, I wanted that book to be like, this is how you win. And in all honesty, it helped, but it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't the be all end all of this is how you become successful, basically telling ridiculous jokes for the rest of your life.
Well, I remember one of the big pieces of advice from Scott Kurtz, and this is why I've always had a frowny face whenever his name comes up, is that, well, you know, long form comics just can't make it. And based on your own testimony here, that's BS.
Oh, it's absolutely untrue.
Yeah.
It's just it's a very different, it's a different arc than the kind of things that he's managed to make work.
Mhm.
But I don't think he necessarily said that in a really serious way. Like, it's sort of like he just said a thing that popped into his head without really thinking it through. I've heard him say that stuff in interviews before, and I think it's more of a go-to answer than like a thought-out response.
Right.
You know, I expect if you asked him now, he might say something totally different because he's done other kinds of things that have clearly worked.
Right.
So,
well, I mean, you've got other comics that have worked out. You know, I mentioned Brian Clevenger of 8-Bit Theater. You know, Frown If You Want, but Control Delete is technically a long format joke comic, but it goes through story arcs and it still exists. So,
well,
you know,
even PvP is technically like it has an overarching story. It tells a joke every single update, or it did. I don't know what it's like now. I haven't read it in a very long time, but you know, at the time when I was like following it religiously, you know, it was every day there was a joke guaranteed or whatever. But and like even with my stuff, you try to end each page with like an emotional closure for the next thing, even if the scene doesn't end. You know, there's like a joke or a statement or something or other that gives you the feeling of closure, which like if you read my comic all in one long go, it seems really dense comedically, because in the course of a conversation there'll be several jokes basically like all piled together in a scene that would like take, if you played it out, 5 or 6 minutes, you know.
right.
The first 300 pages, if you read them as if they were a film, time out to just about 2 hours depending on your internet speed.
Right.
You know, it's all of that text is just stretched out over the time it took to like draw the drawings rather than just filming and saying the words. But like to one degree or another, all comics are basically like that.
Yeah.
And some of them can just stand alone, like, you know, your Far Sides or your Chainsaw Suits or whatever. And some of them like tell stories, you know, like with dumbing of age or questionable content or whatever, but they all have emotional closure at the end of each update.
Right.
Or at least, you know, they strive to. Even I have done pages that like the page clearly does not end with that one because there was just no way to fit all the dialogue in. So you just split it and you're like, well, they ain't all perfect. You know, sometimes you fuck it up.
Now, speaking of time, and I believe the answer to your question is going to confirm or deny my perception of things here. But in spite of as many updates as you've had, I don't really think that a tremendous amount of time has passed in between failures. Am I mistaken in that interpretation?
The first arc is less than 24 hours. And the second one is also less than 24 hours, and they are within 300 pages of each other. I don't remember for sure.
Hmm.
Uh,
What
And
kind
then
of time frame are we talking about?
after
here,
that, it gets really vague. 2 or 3 months have passed, 6 or 7. I really do not know. Like if
Hmm.
someone sat down, some people have told me like it's been 3 days. There's no way that this is like taken more than 3 days of their actual lives. And I'm like, no, there have been jumps in between sections where, you know, they allude to things that have happened that weren't shown, but it's not a very long amount of time.
Well, I'm
You
just
know,
I'm just I'm just really excited about the current arc because it looks like my favorite ship is about to bear some fruit.
well, yeah,
Ed Nina.
everybody seems to forget that like they kissed already, like I don't know how many pages ago, a while back. I feel like it was last year at some point, but I can't remember for sure.
Yeah, but one kiss isn't always a fully confirmed thing.
Right.
Okay, fair enough.
We want to we want to see some consummation of the
Everybody
relationship
wants them
here.
to like travel down to Bone Town, basically.
Well, let me characterize that slightly differently because this kind of leads into something else I was thinking of about the comic. One of the things I've always liked about Between Failures is that obviously the characters do have sex, but what's kind of cool about your presentation is that you're not particularly vulgar about it. You have this sort of, I don't know, you have this kind of neat PG movie, PG-13 movie with some occasional R-rated language thing that goes on that's kind of classy.
I don't know. I try to keep it kind of real, the way that like I've experienced
Mm.
relationships and stuff and how people speak whenever it fits the situation. And like the characters generally as characters aren't vulgar people necessarily, or
Mhm.
they're not vulgar in that way that makes things that are I don't know how to describe it exactly, typically described as like disgusting or whatever, off-putting.
Yeah.
Which I don't feel that way about sex. So they tend to sort of mirror that like view of it's not like a disgusting thing and there's no reason to speak about it in a way that's
Right. You don't have to lampshade it.
off-putting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to lampshade it or anything like that. It's just it is what it is, and that's kind of the cool thing because I see so many webcomics out there that just go for the shock value. I was guilty of it myself. I'm like, hey, here's a spot where the girl is just naked for no reason whatsoever. Yeah.
I've really struggled with like what level of nudity to go ahead and go with, and like with the Patreon, how much to like give outside of the comic itself and stuff like that.
Mhm.
It's a real complex thing, and like I get a lot of crossover readers from David Willis.
Right.
And like once he started doing the like I can't like the Fucktown comics or whatever he calls them.
Yeah, welcome to Fucktown.
Yeah, like everybody was kind of like, well, like all the doors are open now. Everybody can do this because like he made it okay. And I'm like, he made it okay for him.
Right.
It's still an emotional thing that like a creator has to go through to be like, I'm going to show you this very personal thing of like my view on sex, like through these avatars that are like a part of myself,
Right.
which I think is brave on any creator's part, but also to be able to like, from what I've seen of his stuff, present it in a realistic way, where the characters retain their humanity and it doesn't become pornography as such.
Right.
But like, people fuck. That's just
Yes.
reality. And like this idea that like,
The human race is in trouble if that stops happening.
yeah, I mean, the attitude about sex in America is toxic. And
Yeah.
in the world generally, it's toxic as well, but it's a really complex thing. Religion gets involved and screws everything up.
I suppose that depends on where in America you are. Like, keep in mind, this is a very huge place.
Well, I mean, the way people view sex in California is different from the way they view it in Kansas, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
It's all interconnected. It's the same thing as like with, how we ended up with Trump as the president, was a disconnect between sections of the populace, and that holds true for like the wider society of like the fractured people that make up, the United States, and everything's like that. So like, when I present my view on the world, I'm like, wouldn't it be nice if we all kind of like accepted that sex is a thing that happens, and we're allowed to enjoy it, and we don't have to be sick about it. You can be respectful, but at the same time, like there's a character that represents the worst, toxic opinions about it, who I very rarely use because he's super hard to write. It's hard to get into that mindset for me. And whenever I use him, it always feels like he's almost a token character or a straw man. So, I try to humanize everybody because, very few people are straight up evil. Like even Hitler liked dogs and children. Everybody has aspects of the angel and the devil in them.
Oh.
So
we just went
Okay.
there. We just went there.
That's it. We had to invoke him, didn't we?
It would not be an episode of Moonhawk Studios Presents without an invocation of Godwin's Law. That is epic.
All of life is basically become a reason to invoke Godwin's Law, because everything boils down to this weird idea that everything has to be black and white all the time. You're either Jesus or Hitler, and the problem
Some
is
kind of bizarre fusion of.
God damn it.
Nobody can tolerate gray areas. And like a lot of people, I started out the second arc of the comic with Reggie, having not been in the first arc at all, basically coming in and being like this asshole.
Right.
But then over time, like, you start out presenting him like, here's this dick, and he does these things that irritate other people. But then over time, like, he's got all of these other aspects of his personality, and people are like, now they're sympathetic about him. They're like, he acts this way for reasons. He has aspects of his personality that are laudable. So, now there are people that are in his corner, like rooting for him, even though like he's going through the process of learning not to be a complete dick all the time, which is something that like everybody to one degree or another has to go through in their lives of like, I have to learn to live with other people and not just be an asshole all the time. And for some people, that's really hard.
God, I had this moment where I was just like, thank God you said his name, because I could only remember his last name. I just blanked on his first name. I'm so glad you said his name out loud.
Which name was it?
Reggie. I was like,
oh, Reggie Booth.
Yeah. I was like, I was going to ask a question about that, and you saved me.
Some characters are first name characters, some characters are last name characters.
Well, in his mind, that's how I remember him, Booth. Because he's such a douche sometimes, It's just... And you know what? As a retail guy with 23 years experience, I identify with the plight of the store.
Everybody's known a Reggie. Like,
yep.
And like, I didn't name him Reggie for no reason. I mean, he's started as an idea I had once as a teenager. I was like a huge fan of Archie comics, but I loved Reggie. I loved how he was such a dick all the time, but they were still friends with him, and was like, why the fuck are they friends with Reggie? He's an asshole all the time. But they would still be like, let's go to the beach. Let's invite Reggie. There was never a question about it. It was like, no, why would you bring him? He's a dick. And he's always a dick, and he always does shitty things to you guys. And you're like, well, it's just not a picnic if you don't invite Reggie. Yes, it is. It's a wonderful picnic without a huge asshole. But I loved the idea that, like, they always had to bring him. And I was like, what if they made a comic where it was just like everything from his perspective and just called it That Bastard Reggie? And I basically took that idea and worked it into the whole second arc of the comic and was like, this is the adventures of That Bastard Reggie. And so, like, it kind of shows the really minimal villains that we deal with in our daily lives. Like, that's what Reggie is this, like, that other person that is such an ass for whatever reason, but he also has his own story where he's the hero.
Right, right.
And I've always loved that kind of thing. So, like, that was my answer. Like, his arc and everything to do with him is like learning not to be a complete douche all the time. Like, finding a way to balance or, like, empathize with other people. Like, one of his biggest problems is lack of empathy, and that's a huge problem for a lot of people all the time, is not being able to look at the world from other people's perspective.
Right. I had my own personal Reggie when I worked at a store very much like the store in between failures. It's called Bookman's here in Tucson. But my Reggie actually caused me physical harm. His ineptitude caused a 50-pound auto harp to clobber me in the head and send me to the ER for 4 staples.
Oh my God.
And he didn't get fired. I did.
That's typical.
I know, right? It's just unbelievable.
I can't even number the amount of Reggies I worked with over the years. Just, like, coming and going. The first day I worked retail, I worked with, like, the campest Reggie I ever have experienced in my life. Like, looking back on it, though, he was such an amazing person because he was, this was Kansas in the late 90s, and he was straight up camp gay, like flaming red hair, like so stereotypically gay. And I was like, in retrospect, I wish I could have become his friend, because everything about his life story must have been amazing, from where he came from to where he went. And, like, the reason he got fired eventually was he was trying to hook up with another gay guy in another store over the interoffice email. And I'm like, that story alone could have been a whole story for something else, because, like, from his perspective, like, just imagine that. Yeah. It would have been such a great story. And, like, I lament that I didn't make an effort to become his friend, or, like, couldn't break down the barriers that we had between us at the time, because I feel like going forward in life, he would have been a person that would have enriched my experience. And I feel like I missed out from not being able to be his friend, which is, kind of like why part of the point of my comic is, like, give the Reggies a chance, learn about them, because they're the kind of people that have trouble in life, and you can learn more about how you can go through life from watching them fuck it up.
I love it. I love it. We're starting to run a little short on time here. So, did anybody else have any questions they wanted to field to Jackie here before we wrap up?
Nah, I'm good.
I have a minor procedural question as a person who follows a lot of webcomics. What kind of, just procedurally, what kind of buffer do you usually try to work with, if any?
When I started, I had a 2-week buffer that I was able to keep up for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. I guess less than that now that I think about it, because it's been 5 since I was in the hospital, or 4 thereabouts. But like, ideally, the as much buffer as you can have is the best. But right now, I'm doing it day to day, because like
Okay.
all the shit that's gone on has totally destroyed that. Like, and the thing is once you lose the buffer, it's incredibly difficult to build it back up.
Oh yeah, it's
So
just as hard, if not harder, to start it up again as it is the first time.
Yeah, because you know, like in my prime, I could knock out a page in under a day or under 2 sittings, and like physically I would be fine to keep doing other things. But when I went into the hospital and came back out, I was like physically weakened to the point where I could no longer work fast enough to keep up. So it's like took more and more time to do these things that would normally have taken me 10 or 15 minutes, and still would have time to deal with all the horrifying crap going on in real life. So like I've never been able to get back to that point physically of being able to work fast enough to have a buffer anymore, which is horribly stressful. But
Oh, it sounds like it.
if it had happened 7 or 8 years ago, it would have ended me, because I wasn't confident enough in myself to be able to continue at all. But like now I'm like, I have enough confidence in myself to know where I'm going with things all the time, where it's like, if it's an hour before I have to post, if I absolutely had to, I could find a way to make it work.
Wow.
So it doesn't like send me into like, full on panic attacks or anything if things are starting to go wrong. Although that said, there have been a couple of times where it's come within sort of 3 or 4 hours of missing an update, and it really started to mess me up mentally, because I've gone for over 10 years now not missing a single update without like it being something like going to the ER or something like that. And like in my head, that's an important thing to keep up, even though like realistically it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things if I am late one time out of the hundreds of thousands of times that I've been on time. But it's there in my brain.
Right.
So
fear is the mind killer.
Very much.
Yep.
It is the little death.
I did have one quick style question. As I look at the style of the comic, I noticed that you have this heavy influence that kind of reminds me of Lupin the Third. What made you choose that as your style for the comic?
I loved, and still do, like 70s to 80s manga and anime.
Mm-hmm.
I love that aesthetic. I've never been able to capture it in my own work, but I've always liked it, like a huge amount, like Caravan Kid or Outlanders, particularly. And like, if you actually look at Lupin the Third comics, like the original ones, they don't really look like the cartoons that they made out of them. They're way more slapstick.
Yeah, Monkey Punch's art style is not exactly the same as what was used for the anime and stuff.
Like the cleaned up version, like the Hayao Miyazaki version of it, is like the one that I like better. But like, I don't know why, but for some reason I was obsessed with Widow's Peaks as a like teenager. I don't know, I had huge sideburns, which that explains one thing, but I don't know why I liked Widow's Peak so much. So like, for a while every character I designed had them, and even still 2 characters have prominent Widow's Peaks when the comic starts out, and I cut that back by like changing Thomas's hairstyle, because I was like, maybe it's time to like lay off this a little bit. Although like there's still things I do as visual shorthand that commonalities between all the characters. They're just things that I like stylistically, and for whatever reason have become married to over the years. But
All
like,
right.
I like the kind of smarmy ass look of Lupin, and like Thomas very much has that
Yes.
arrogant, know-it-all kind of snot-faced smile, which does not come from nowhere. I'm certainly guilty of my share of arrogant bullshit over the course of my life.
I always think of that scene in Independence Day when Will Smith opens up the alien spacecraft and goes, "Welcome to Earth," and punches the alien in the face. When I think of that face.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Now, this is a question, if you're willing to answer, and maybe I'm just dense and you answered it, and I've never actually noticed it before. You mentioned a long time ago that each of the characters has a number in their ear. Are you willing to share what that means?
I can tell like some of them. Some of them
Okay.
I don't remember for sure, and some of them are just secret, straight up. But
Just give us a general sense of whatever you're willing to share.
the let's see. If you take the number 4 and like turn it on its side,
Mhm.
can't remember which way you have to rotate it to make that happen. It looks a little bit like a capital J.
Okay.
So my name is Jackie, and Thomas is my self-insert character. He's named after myself and my grandfather, or my great-grandfather. So if you rotate the J, stick it in the ear as a 4, that's basically what his is.
Nice.
The Carol's is more like a spiral, but it's basically the number 6. And I dated a girl whose nickname was 6 at one point. And like after we broke up, it's kind of like a shitty nod to this part of my past. I stuck that in his love interest's ear as just like kind of a fuck you to her or reality or whatever, however you want to put it.
I love it.
The John's ear number is 3. And if you've ever seen the cartoon Clone High, the character JFK, the way that they draw his inner ear basically looks like a 3. And like he sort of functions in the comic as that sort of character, especially early on.
Right.
So, and the guy that one of the people that he's kind of loosely based on is also that sort of person in a way. And we were both big fans of that show. So like as a nod to him, like I made that his ear number.
Perfect.
And like they all have different stories, but a lot of them were so current, and like I got away from that doing that all the time. So like the new ones don't mean things that are so solid in my mind, so I cannot remember necessarily like what the others are for different people. And some of them that I forgot. The only person I ever told every single reason for the ear numbers was a girl who was a fan, and she died like 2 weeks after I told her. And so like I've never told everybody the entire story of all of them just because of that, which is, I don't know, maybe that's just a dumb thing, but
well,
it means something to me. So
hey, I hear that, and I appreciate you sharing what you did, because that's kind of cool. I like that. I always like little details like that, especially since you hinted at it a while back, and I was like, man, now I got to know at least one of them.
The ear thing was really, really important before I started. Like the character designs came from a comic idea that I had before I did anything else that was like way more angsty and emo and just retarded. Forgive me, old habit. Ridiculous kind of like, grade school looking philosophy nonsense that I had made up. And as time went on, I was like, this is actually kind of dumb. Maybe I should just not worry about it so much. So like, they all basically have kept the same shapes, but they're made to look a little more like something that might actually happen in a human ear.
All right. I had another question in mind, but I totally blanked on it, so it must not have been that important.
Well, I'm perfectly willing to go on at length over all of the minutia of my nonsense.
Well, I think we're gonna save that for another episode because there's definitely enough here, and there's so much material in here. We could definitely have you back in the future to talk more about it, especially once you get your next major arc done. That would be kind of cool, actually.
You know where I am if ever you need me.
Absolutely. I'm trying to. This podcast has been on so long. It has to be it. Our
Was
first.
years and years ago. I don't remember how long ago that was.
That's the second comic collective that I believe I contributed to the self-destruction.
Now that I think about it, that's probably where we know each other from originally. Like the original time we like friended each other on Facebook, I would guess
it had
comes from that.
Yeah, because I did all the webcomic artists and everything like that. It was just so funny because my ex, Jamie, who was the creator of Emerald Winter, and I just went off on Kat, the guy who ran the place. And we're like, your ideas are stupid and you're embarrassing all of us.
I remembered like things kind of falling apart before I left, but whatever happened to all of that?
It was so strange. I mean, he was like, we're going to go and buy a bunch of action figures and we're going to repaint them to look like your characters. And like nobody would sign over the rights to their characters because they were like, nah, bro, that sounds like a terrible idea. And he kept roping everybody into working on Lady Star, and it was just, oh God. I killed Comic of the Month too. Yes, Doodles, it's terrible. I killed Comic of the Month too because the owner of that one tried a similar harebrained scheme to try to basically get everybody to sign over the rights to their characters.
That seems to be like the go-to for everybody at some point in the comics game is like I don't have to make up anything, I'll just steal it from everybody else.
Well, I feel like that's got to be one of the more important things about doing a webcomic is that you don't have to work with a major syndicate or anything to get your comic out there.
Oh yeah,
but it seems like everybody tried.
That was the dichotomy of webcomics for the longest time, like which I think was typified by Scott Kurtz in like his sort of public battle with people who for lack of a better word, were apologists for publishers, and then he worked with Image and at the same time was like, screw this noise, keep your own stuff, go it on your own. The world doesn't have to be this way anymore.
Right.
So he kind of had his feet in both worlds, but there's a case to be made for reasons why you might want to work with a publisher or you might not. And for some people, you'll never be legitimate until you've had a comic published by something that counts as a publisher. If I tell any of my relatives what I do for a living, it doesn't make any difference how much money I make. I'm a weird person with a weird hobby. They don't understand how I make money, and I'll never be anything but that.
Yeah, my dad's like, you've been at it 15 years. When is it going to stop? And I'm like, actually, it's 18, but, who's counting?
It's super lucky because my parents are ridiculously supportive of a man-child who has gone through 41 years of just ridiculous nonsense, and happened to just get to a point where things have sort of worked out for the time being. The way the world is, it could all fall apart at any moment, which is horrifying, but just have to find a way to cope with that reality.
Indeed.
I certainly hope that Patreon becomes something that society accepts as the new, or part of the new normal for how you monetize content on the internet and just in life in general, because it's certainly way more effective than advertising has ever managed to be for me, although I've done really well comparatively with Project Wonderful and advertising and whatnot in general.
Indeed.
Anyway, if you want to stop this podcast, you better stop it, because I will.
No.
I will speak again.
That's right. Well, if only because we try to limit the time so that way our listeners' attention doesn't wander. But I've got to say, I've been endlessly fascinated by all of this, and of course,
the problem is I'm so compelling. And I just can't. I can't turn it off, and just being as good looking as I am, I just enchant people with my dulcet tones.
As people always tell me, I have a lovely face for radio. Oh man, I'm looking forward to what's coming next for Between Failures. You got any shows coming up that you're going to be doing or anything like that?
I have never been to a convention.
Oh my God, you need to start.
Is that
man.
legal?
How can you be in comics, man?
It's another one of those bizarre things of my trajectory. I never once had any financial reason to go to a convention because I don't have anything to sell other than 50% of a story, a book, no t-shirts. It's who's going to come to a convention just to talk to me?
You'd be surprised.
And
if all else fails, you can do slightly naughty pictures of Carol.
That's true. That is true.
Either that or encourage people to click on Sexy Nina to become a patron.
I've gotten so much shit over that image.
And in the end, their opinions don't matter.
As people are willing to tolerate a little bit of my old school sexism, I guess it's okay. I try to keep it to the bare minimum.
Well,
I can't always help it.
Maybe it's the Joe lovers or being Nina haters. Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe so.
All right, Jackie, it was great having you on the podcast. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I hope we got enough. Good material and insight to have everybody check out your comic, and I wish you the best success.
Well, thank you very much. I do the same for you and all of yours.
All right, man. All right, so that was Jackie Wohlenhaus of Between Failures. You can find his comic at betweenfailures.com. It is a great read. The artwork is consistently sharp, and the storyline is actually, I don't think I've seen a dud arc yet on this series. So that's my ringing endorsement. 5 stars, but 2 thumbs up, all that stuff. A couple of toes.
I'd give it more thumbs if I had more hands.
Exactly. All right, now, since we're running really late, I got to make this quick. Our guest next week, and I hope everybody is excited about this as I am, but I have managed to secure the attention of one Richard Epcar to appear on the program.
Now, by secure attention, you don't mean you drugged him and is hiding in your closet, right?
Quiet! Anyway. No, he's actually a super nice and approachable guy, and that's what's so exciting about it. You may know him from Dragon Ball Z. I know him from classic dubs of Macross Plus. He was
I know him from Lupin the Third as Jigen.
There you go.
Daisuke Jigen. Bato. Yeah, Batos is most famous. He does Ansem the Dark Seeker from the Kingdom Hearts series.
He was in Gundam Unicorn.
He was in Robotech. This guy is rad, and we have needed him to be on this show.
Recently played the principal from Persona 5 and the Joker in the Injustice games.
Come on. He's going to be JoJo.
He's
Yep.
going to be Joseph Joestar. He is Joseph Joestar.
Well, it's like I don't think anyone noticed his bit part in part 2.
I did.
It's like, speaking
It's weird that you guys would bring up JoJo, because like I finally decided that was something I needed to like watch at some point, and I've had the theme song stuck in my head for 2 days.
Well, we've lost another half hour, Ogre. Go.
Wow, that was a lot of crosstalk there. Thanks,
Sorry.
guys.
You're welcome.
Sono chino sadame.
And on that note, I'm going to say, on behalf of the cast at Moonhawk Studios Presents, be sure to tune in next week at our regular time, 8 p.m. on Wednesdays on the coast, and 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Until next time, I'm Mac Paladin on behalf of the cast at Moonhawk Studios Presents. Thank you for listening, and stay safe out there, kids.